Hello and welcome back to our live coverage of the United Nations Climate Talks here in Cancun, Mexico. We've been with you for the last 3 hours and we've got half an hour left. I'm delighted to say that we've been joined by Zaina as well, and also by Pelenise Alofa from the Kiribas Climate Action Network. I hope I got the pronunciation okay. Yeah,
correct.
Good. I was frantically pulling it up in front of me on the screen. We're going to have just a relaxed chat for the last half an hour.
Relying very much on everyone's questions and comments from home, so send us any comments and questions you have to put them to our guest.
It's a live show, and so we'd love to hear your comments and questions. As Zaina says, you can send them by Twitter using the hashtag OneClimate, and we'll monitor that. And also, if you're watching on oneclimate.net, or if you're watching our embed on any other website, you should see a comments box just below the window. So if you hit the comment now button, then we'll monitor what's coming in and pass your questions to Pelenise or discuss them between ourselves. So Pelenise, perhaps the first thing to do is to ask you to introduce yourself.
Pelenise Alofa from Kiribas. Well, my island is Banaba in Kiribas, and I also live in Rambi in Fiji.
And why are you at the climate talks?
I am here with my NGOs, with the Pacific Calling Partnership and also with Oxfam to help to bring the human face to these climate talks while the negotiations are on.
And so what's your experience of climate change? You say you bring a human face to the climate talks. Like, why? How have you been impacted by climate change? Why is it an important issue for you?
Climate change affects or have impact on everybody, right? Children, women, and men. But I think we say that Kiribas is in a most vulnerable country, but in the most vulnerable country, you have the most vulnerable people, and that is the mothers, the women, and the children. And the impact right now is, especially with the water, when there's a drought, there is no drinking water. We depend on the well in Kiribas, the well water, the bore water, which they used to boil and drink. That's what the mothers do.
Can you just tell, just for those who don't know, where Kiribas is and the situation as is?
Kiribas is a group of islands in the middle of the South Pacific. 33 islands.
Sounds beautiful.
It's in a beautiful space, but it's all scattered. If you put Kiribas, the map of Kiribas, from one end, east to west, it could fit like in America, east to west. But it's islands, dotted islands in the big ocean of water. We have more ocean than land.
So you're seeing kind of effects of climate change as small island states. So what kind of effects are they?
The effects right now is the erosion of the land and the water problems. You know, the salination of water. When we have a drought and we have water coming up from the sea, that's the most impact. And water is a necessity of life. And if that is taken away from you, it affects the women, it affects children, it creates problems like sickness, and it affects the health of the people.
And coming to these talks, do you kind of feel, do they feel connected to your experiences at home? Like, we're sitting in a warehouse in Cancun, in Mexico, and it's grey and largely soulless, despite various organisations' efforts to inject some colour into it. Does it feel like these talks are important to your experiences at home?
The talks are important, but to be honest, being in Cancun, where I live in my hotel, beside a man-made beach, right? It's way beyond, what I think we should be negotiating about.
How many COP events have you attended? How many COP events have you?
No, 3 COP events. No.
3 COPs. So is that Poznan, Copenhagen, and Cancun?
No, Copenhagen. No. 2, but one is in Barcelona.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And do you feel like the process is moving forward, or does it feel repetitive when you come back?
The process is static. It's not moving. I think we are going back, because we have not come up with any binding agreement at this stage. I hope something come up before the next week. I hope something come up.
Today I attended a presentation by the Adaptation Fund, and there was quite a nice action actually at the end of that, which we will bring to our viewers tomorrow. But there was a lot of questions from small island states about adaptation money. How do we get it, and when is it going to arrive? Do you face issues with trying to...
There's so much promises and so much pledges, but money does not reach a community, does not meet a person, does not meet the needs of a person right there.
So what kind of things are you asking for money for? So can you tell us, what are the needs?
Water. It's a basic thing like getting a water tank for the mothers, to catch the rain when it comes, when it's rainy season. We don't, right? We don't have that, And now they're building seawalls, but the seawalls is protecting the public property, the road, because it's eroding away. Okay, we need the road, but what about the people, my land that is eroding away? Why can't it be, they build a seawall around the whole island?
And what do you feel like when you see this happening? You say you have to build a seawall around the whole island. Does that feel like a viable, a future for your island? Is to have a small island in the sea with an ever-growing seawall around it?
Well, it's hard. It's hard when you see the seawall. You normally see the beaches. But now it's been blocked. But if that's the way to survive, we will build the seawalls.
Because just like speaking to Ursula from Papua New Guinea, she's talking about mass migration, right? People have to just pack up and leave because the sea is encroaching, the beaches are eroding. So it's not so much only the loss of a geographical location, but it's a loss of a culture. So tell us a bit about Kiribas and the culture there, and how is it linked to the sea?
Well, my people, we are indigenous people, right? That means we are close to the land, we are close to the ocean. The ocean is part of our life, right? But today, the ocean is actually becoming a threat to us. But we cannot accept relocation or resettlement, but maybe in the end we will have to. The saddest thing about it is our people are not emotionally prepared to move,
And so, tell me, on the ground, people on the ground, do they talk about climate change? Is it something that you all sit around and talk about in the communities in Kiribas? Are the words being used there? Is there awareness that this...
There is awareness, but we have to be very careful that we do not make it like a threat and do not make it like, we're moving. Because, as I said, our people are not emotionally prepared yet. This kind of awareness, emotional awareness, should be going and explaining to them that if we have to move, we should be ready to move, We're not just going to be talking about the impacts and all that, They will look at it as, nonsense, And come on, we will continue to live here all our life. They will not move. So you have to prepare them gradually,
At the moment, the kind of current commitments made here and under the Copenhagen Accord, scientists say that it's kind of taking us towards 4 degrees of warming. For many of the vulnerable states, the small island states,
we want 1.5.
1.5 degrees is kind of the limit of what you could kind of survive with. The former head of the International Panel on Climate Change, the UN scientific body, he came out last week and he said, this is Bob Watson, he came out and he said that he thinks 2 degrees is a wishful dream. So when you say your communities and the people that you live with aren't emotionally prepared for the idea that they have to leave, do you think that in reality they will have to leave? Is there a sense of resignation, or do you still hold out hope that we can kind of achieve the impossible?
That they will not leave, but me personally, if I'm talking about myself, I know that in the long term we may live, may leave Kiribas, our country. What I'm not prepared is to accept is that there is no preparation for my people. If we are moving, we have to move at least to one place, one country, one area where we can continue to have our culture. We cannot just move in different countries and we will lose everything.
And is that something that you're already preparing for? Because we interviewed the president of the Maldives, President Nasheed, in Copenhagen, and he said that they were looking at buying land maybe in Sri Lanka or maybe in Australia, and he said it was preposterous, and that, in reality, if the Maldives sinks, then you might move people, but you'll lose their culture, you'll lose their heritage, you'll lose their history, you'll lose their environment that they've always existed in. Is moving something that you're actually looking into, and even if you could find one place, do you think you'd still exist as a nation and as a community?
But the question is, if we move to another country, you tell me, how safe is it for us? Is that country going to be there, or we're going to move from that country again if we have a problem in that country? Is it definite?
It's almost like listening to you talk. It almost feels like we're talking about war.
It is.
And the thing about war is that it's something that's you can't maybe personally control, but maybe with climate change, do you feel like there's something you can do about it? And war disperses people in that way. When you run away because of a war, you get dispersed, and the communities, like my parents ran away from Lebanon because of the war, and they still talk of the day they're going to go back. You don't go back, and it's almost like starting to talk about climate change like war, but we can do something to stop this, maybe.
Some people said it's too late. I feel it's not. We're just not doing anything, and so it's going to be late. See, we're not doing anything.
But I think maybe lots of our viewers, perhaps, and lots of people watching in the United Kingdom or the United States, not only do they not experience climate change, or they don't feel it on a day-to-day basis, but also maybe they don't even realise that it's happening or that it exists. Perhaps they kind of hear the stories in the newspapers, and they've heard about ClimateGate, where scientists were accused of not displaying their information accurately, although subsequent investigations have shown that they've kind of their integrity was intact. But for these people watching, is there anything you can say? You've mentioned that water is an issue.
Well, in these countries, they could help us in Kiribas by talking to their governments to cut the emissions. But they must also remember that their lifestyle back in the UK and Europe and US is not sustainable. Because if water stops, and if they do not have electricity today, they will collapse. They will not have anything. Right? But if they have a disaster, they couldn't even handle the Katrina. They couldn't handle that. Imagine the bigger disasters we're going to come to their countries because of climate change. It's going to be worse. So my message to them, look around you. Do not think that what you have right now is going to be there forever. I'm crying today, but you will cry tomorrow. You have to do something today for the whole world, globally, for everybody.
It's a powerful message. You say that you still hold out hope. What do you think it will take to persuade societies to change and to change our unsustainable patterns of consumption in Europe and in the US? And you come to a place like this in Cancun, and it's kind of a emblem of unsustainable consumption, if you like. The hotels and the resorts and the total reliance on this kind of style of tourism. What's gonna give, if you like? How do we change that? How do you even begin to change that? And I'll give you the background to why I'm asking this question. Yesterday at this time slot, we spoke to a woman about the role of business in climate change and its potential to contribute to solutions. And she's saying that business has to be involved. It has to, otherwise we won't find a solution, because business is such a big contributor to the problem that we have to.
Companies.
Yeah, that they have to persuade them that they've got to be involved in the solution. But in order for business to be involved, it has to be something they can profit from, I think. Like, that's the perception, at least for lots of people. And so we're putting a value on trees, we're putting a value on water, we put a value on carbon emissions, everything. And she said, I think everything needs to have a value. That was her. We need to give everything an economic value in order to discourage businesses from polluting our planet. And I sat there and I thought, okay, I can see why she says that. But that seems to be reinforcing the exact kind of patterns of consumption, the idea that everything is a commodity that got us into this mess. And so I'm stuck, because on the one hand, it doesn't seem realistic to me that we'll overturn the entire economic system anytime soon, not soon enough to save nations like Kiribati and Kiribas and the Maldives. But on the other hand, the idea of giving everything a value so that we can engage business, or giving everything an economic value because we can't recognise its inherent value, the inherent value of nature, that doesn't seem very satisfactory either. So, how on earth are we going to overturn these totally unsustainable patterns of consumption in that context?
For me, it will boil down to individuals. The awareness must go to individuals that you must learn to be satisfied with the basic needs. You don't need more and more and more. Because of, our wanting more, the companies continue to grow. They want to provide everything that we wanted. But if you're satisfied with one type of Colgate, not 20 type of Colgates, toothpaste, or one, maybe 2 types of shoes, not 50 types of shoes, then that will reduce the production of all these kind of goods.
If you describe the life in your community in Kiribas as sustainable,
yes, it is sustainable if I return to my village, because I have my land and I have a house, right? On my land, even if it's a thatch house, there's a house. My basic needs are available, right? But the basic need is taken away from me today because of climate change. Like my water, is not drinkable, right?
Because of things as a result of overconsumption somewhere completely different.
Right. So there's a difference between the big countries and us. We are sustainable. I can return home, and maybe in the eyes of other people I am poor, but I am not poor. In my community, I am not poor if I have my basic needs. I have a land, I have a house, I have food, I have clothing. You are a man, right? A human being. But if you do not have those, then something is wrong with you. Yes, So I feel in our community it is sustainable, but we're having problems now.
Having problems sustaining your sustainability.
Yes, that's it. That's the way I see. I do not think of economic, as to say that's poverty.
Gandhi says there's enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed.
Right.
If everyone consumes just what they, and it's a choice every person needs to make. As you said, do you need 10 pairs of shoes, or is one enough? It's a choice, and it's in every person's power to make that choice.
I just want to remind our viewers that this is an interactive show, and so we're broadcasting live from the UN Climate Talks in Cancun in Mexico.
Sometimes I forget that it's live, I just talk.
No, it's good, it's nice, it's really compelling. Yeah, we've had a question come in. In response to our discussion about how we might encourage people in the rich world to live more sustainable lifestyles, somebody says, isn't the crux of the issue adaptation, and that rich countries have resources to adapt? Countries like Qatar or something, they feel
they're the main agents of causing climate change, but they also have enough money to adapt to it.
Do they really have? I wonder.
In the long term, who knows?
Do they really have with natural disasters? Maybe not with climate change, but natural disasters. And climate change is pushing the natural disasters worse than before. Like in my island, in Fiji, we live on the site where it's not a track, a road or the track for cyclones. Now we've received 2 cyclones one after another. It never have before, you know.
We were talking about this yesterday, actually, adaptation measures, and the scientists have now come out to say that the Russian heat wave that happened was directly linked to climate change, and potentially the Pakistan floods were also linked to climate change. So we're starting to see more confirmation from science that what was it that you told me? It's not all natural disasters are
climate change,
but
climate change will result in natural disasters. But is the point that we have to? Are we gonna have to wait for rich countries to start experiencing the kinds of natural disasters that they can't cope with? Is that really what it's going to take before people take notice of this? Because if that's the case, then
we don't have to wait. They are waiting for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
okay,
the big countries, but we're not waiting for that. Unfortunately, we do not have technology, we do not have funding to help us to adapt quickly.
But do you think before we see international action, before we see the big polluters, is it the case that they're going to have had to experience this firsthand? Because in China, for example, where we were in Tianjin reporting live from the previous UN meeting there, and they see there's huge efforts there to make their economy greener than it is, and they're now the biggest polluter in the world. Of course, per capita, the pollution is much smaller than countries like the US or the UK. But I think there's a recognition in China that they need to change, because actually, if you go to these cities, the smog is unbearable in Tianjin and in Beijing, where Jamie, the tech guy, and I were. You'd walk out, it'd be thick and grey, and they're experiencing the environmental problems firsthand. And with glaciers melting, sources of water a huge issue for potentially millions of people. And so they are starting to look into it, and China is starting to try and get a head start on green technologies. But in countries like the UK and the US and some parts of Europe, is there a danger that they're not going to experience the devastating impacts of climate change fast enough for them to take note? Because whilst in Kiribas people are already trying to take action without resources, in rich countries they have resources and there's not so much incentive to try and take action.
Well, I guess because they do not feel it, as they said. So maybe while we are trying to survive, if it really hits us, they will be the first ones to go down, because they're not ready for it. It's not about money. America shouldn't wait. UK shouldn't wait.
And just to start wrapping up, there, another message has just come in saying that the terms being used, like calling it adaptation, it's quite a clinical term. And it doesn't bring to mind maybe the reality on the ground, which what they're saying, it's not really how it feels when your home is washed away and your family dies from floods. So maybe these big words aren't conveying the emotionality.
All these words that they use in negotiations are all English. It doesn't matter to us. We just want to survive. That's all. They're fighting in negotiation about vulnerability, adaptation, about all these terms. To me, it doesn't mean anything. What is more important to me is, that it is your responsibility to help the people and get the money there, whether it's for adaptation or what. It should be there. Yes, it should be there to help the people to survive right now.
We interviewed a delegate from the Maldives in China, and she said to us that they're spending more on adaptation now than they are on education for their young people. And when she said that, it made me stop and think. I thought, this is a nation now which is spending more on just trying to survive than it is on the education and than it is on its future. And kind of, hopefully, it's that kind of thing that can leap this kind of.
It's sad when you hear people talking about words, to define words and all that. No, here everyone they know what it is all about, what we're crying about, and so just give it, provide that so that people could survive. Stop negotiating on words,
Well, maybe that's quite apt note to finish the conversation on. I think we've kind of deconstructed some of these awful UN terms and got rid of some acronyms and got to the heart of the issue, and this is about survival. So Pelenise, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really nice to talk to you.
Me this afternoon.
We're going to go to a short video now. We've been focusing on gender and climate change for the entire day today, and we've had some really great discussions, including this one. We're going to bring you a video from the UK where there's a group called Climate Rush, and they are inspired by the suffragettes, the women's movement in the UK, and they're taking the principles and values of the suffragettes and applying them to direct action that they're taking in around the UK and in London.
Are we also saying good night?
Well, I thought we'll run that video. I might come back and give you a quick news summary of the day, and then we will say good night, I think.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.